Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my best team for the Open Great League. Today, I got to play off-stream for the first time in almost a month, and went on a crazy 18-2 run with this squad. This team is centered around Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados recently won the Toronto Regional Championships, and it is just absolutely unbelievable in the meta. It completely destroys all the Mud Slappers and Annihilates, and I paired it up with two Pokemon in the back that'll shut down Bastiodon: Earthquake, Licky, and Stunfisk. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at this very fun and very strong team in the Open Great League. We're off to a great start in game number 1, leading Shadow Gyarados into Magcargo. This is an Ember Magcargo, but even with the faster pacing on Ember compared to Incinerate, they're just never going to be able to outpace Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados is just too fast. It is outpacing everything. They can fire off the Rock Tomb, but I'm more than happy to match shields. I'm going to look to farm up. Opponent tries for a catch onto Corviknight, and I get to bank almost 100 energy and send out Stunfisk. My opponent is already very ABA weak to the Stunfisk, so I would rather kind of get rid of the Stunfisk here and trust in the fact that Shadow Gyarados energy is pretty much good into everything. Corviknight will land the payback onto the Stunfisk. Stunfisk going to look to overfarm slightly before taking the knockout with Discharge. Discharge not known for being a strong move, but they are low enough that it will KO. Back in comes Magcargo. Magcargo CMP ties the Stunfisk. A Rock Tomb will not cut it. They're going to have to full send the Overheat. Overheat lands. Down goes Stunfisk. In comes Gyarados. In the back is Jellicent. And my opponent was running a team that was triple weak to Shadow Gyarados. Crunch lands. That damage is just devastating. And now Jellicent is in a range where I can even just knock out with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail lands. Down goes Jellicent. Back in comes Magcargo. And Shadow Gyarados is just completely running away with the game. Look at the power of this Pokemon. We're even going to throw one extra Dragon Breath and the Aqua Tail to go for good charge stack timing. Aqua Tail easily KOs Magcargo, and that is a good game. Hopping into game number 2, picking up a bit of a tricky lead, Shadow Gyarados into Guzzlord. Even though my Dragon Breaths do hit for super effective damage here, Gyarados' charge attacks are walled. However, Gyarados hits so hard that honestly doesn't end up being too much of a problem. Typically, I'll try and fire off the Aqua Tail here, and then look to CMP tie the second Aqua Tail with their second Brutal Swing. They should be low enough that an Aqua Tail will barely take the knockout. My opponent realizes it, and they put up a shield. Now I'm in a pretty nice spot. I'm just going to double shield and Dragon Breath them down. My opponent has other ideas. They save switch into Corviknight. I get to bank energy, rebanking that Aqua Tail for later, and again, Corviknight gets answered with Stunfisk. Stunfisk does a really nice job at shutting down a lot of pretty popular Pokemon right now. It's not a Pokemon that I feel that I run a lot, but in this case, it worked perfectly because I wanted a pretty good check to Azumarill, something that would answer the many Corviknight save switches that exist, and a hard counter to the ever-present Bastiodon. Unfortunately, I do end up CMP tying there, so a bit of a counting error on my part. This charge is going to land, and I'm just looking to pivot back into the Gyarados. In comes Gyarados to the Guzzlord. In the back is a Moongus, and that is an incredibly cool pick. The run that I went on, the 18-2 run, started in the 2800s and ended up in the 3000s. I believe it was 210 ELO over 4 sets, so some pretty massive ELO gains at a competitive ELO. Now Gyarados got the shield, it got huge damage onto the Amoonguss, and I can send in Licky. Licky, due to its normal subtyping, double resisting Astonishes, and that means that Grass Knot will not be able to take the 2-hit KO. My opponent makes a really nice catch. They end up waiting and catching the Earthquake onto Guzzlord, but the good news here is I'm still in a pretty good spot. Realistically, I probably didn't even have to go for an Earthquake there. I probably could have just gone for the Body Slam, but I figured I'd Earthquake to be safe. They catch the Earthquake, and it just didn't matter because Shadow Gyarados put us so far ahead. We see a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Scizor. Now, even though Gyarados does resist the bullet punches, if Scizor goes straight Trailblaze, Scizor does have the ability to fully farm down in the 2s. If my opponent does go for the Trailblaze, I'm going to shield and then look to pivot into Licky to try and force the Scizor off the field to reset their attack boost. But they don't end up going for it. Instead, they Night Slash into a very nice catch onto Azumarill. Azumarill more than happy to absorb the Aqua Tail, but I'm staying in with the Gyarados. I'm going to look to rebank a ton of energy and then send out Licky. Azumarill is one of the only Pokemon that can actually absorb Shadow Gyarados energy, so the fact that I see it here, not on the Gyarados, is pretty nice. That means that the Gyarados energy that I banged should hopefully put a pretty big dent in whatever my opponent has in the back. I'm able to fire off the Body Slam and make the Earthquake on the CMP tie. So far, we haven't had any Bastiodon switch in, but I assure you, the Bastiodon switch-ins to Licky Safe Switch are coming, and it's very, very funny, as Bastiodon just ends up getting completely deleted by Earthquakes in a matchup where they thought they were very safe. I send in Stunfisk. My opponent ended up turn waiting there to see what got brought in, and as a result, I do end up getting an extra sneak. In the back is Altaria. I switch in Gyarados, and I'm able to make an Aqua Tail and a Crunch. I'm expecting them to call the first, so I will full send the Crunch, but they end up shielding that Crunch, and now I can only make it to an Aqua Tail. So a 50-50 call that I did not get right, and that is unfortunate for me. In comes Stunfisk. I have a ton of energy, but Altaria is already at the Flamethrower, and I'm forced to put up the shield. I'm very low on the Stunfisk. It actually ends up being a CMP tie, but the good news for me is that I have so much loaded energy. I'm going to farm up, ensuring that I'm at the back-to-back, because Shadow Scizor, if I'm not mistaken, is one off the Night Slash. So I will have to watch for what gets brought in here and make sure that the Mud Bomb lands on Scizor. In comes Scizor, we wait. The Bullet Punch goes through, and that's going to be game over. Mud Bomb knocks out Scizor, Azumarill gets Thundershock down, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, we get a Dream Lead Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Talonflame. My opponent safe switches into Furret, and I don't really have a clear response to a Furret safe switch with this team. So I'm just going to stay in with the Gyarados, launch Aqua Tail, get big damage, and now I can send in Licky Licky. Anytime you see Talonflame with this team, it's an automatic win because you have 3 counters to Talonflame. You just don't need switch advantage. So even if my opponent wants to try and make a play for switch, it just simply will not matter because Talonflame has nowhere to go. I'm going to overfarm to the max here with the Licky Licky, looking to take the knockout with Body Slam, and I'll exit with a ton of loaded energy. My opponent, they probably don't want to bring back in the Talonflame, right? Because if they do, they're going to be taking rollouts. They send in Annihilate, and they're just ABA weak to the Gyarados. I fire off Earthquake, get the shield, send back in the Gyarados, and Gyarados is about to absolutely run away with this. My opponent, they can't afford to switch. They have to stay in with the Annihilate and just boost up the counters and hope that this is going to be enough. But Shadow Gyarados is just too fast. Annihilate has 12 turn pacing. Gyarados has 9 turn pacing. We make the Aqua Tail. That's going to be taking the knockout. Talonflame, I believe, will be able to incinerate me down. But unfortunately for them, we have 3 Talonflame counters. So we just send out the Stunfisk, Talonflame top lefts immediately, and the win streak continues. Shadow Gyarados into Jellicent, a pretty nice lead in the next match. But Jellicent can make this a little bit uncomfortable if they go straight Surf. In my eyes, I think going straight Surf probably makes the most sense for them, just because even a Surf being resisted, it's still going to do a ton of damage. I'm going to farm up so much energy with the Gyarados. I feel that a bait was too risky here, so I full send the Crunch, but my opponent will end up shielding. However, when they end up going for the Hex, this time I'm going for the bait. My opponent ends up double shielding, and now I can cleanly win the 2 shield here, even though they're going straight Surf. Going straight Surf does give them a pacing advantage. I've already lost so much HP from the Hexes, but I'm going to get to knock out this Jellicent, and I'm still going to have a Gyarados that's in the yellow. Opponent sends in Licky Licky. I don't want to get farmed down, so I end up switching in my own Licky Licky, and my opponent responds with a Clodsire. Clodsire thinks it's safe, but this is not your normal Licky Licky. Earthquake lands, and that's going to pick up a clean 2-hit KO onto the Clodsire. Clodsire can land an Earthquake. I have no Protect Shields left to hide behind, but it's just simply not going to matter. Licky Licky will get the Earthquake. I'm just throwing this charge attack instantly. I want the Clodsire gone as soon as it possibly can. The Clodsire will get KO'd. Back in comes the Gyarados, and Gyarados will make it to the Aqua Tail. Licky Licky is a pretty bulky Pokemon, and that's why it's such a surprise that the Shadow Aqua Tail does so much damage. We're able to get Licky Licky low, in comes Stunfisk, and their only win gun is if they're also on the Earthquake tech, but they are not. They go for the Shadow Ball. That does absolutely nothing, and my opponent will concede the match. Hopping into the next match, Shadow Gyarados into a regular Talonflame. Whether it's Shadow or not, it's a dominant lead win. My opponent safe switches into Malamar, and this is where things could get a little bit complicated. I don't have a strong answer to Malamar on this team. I'm able to grab a shield with the Aqua Tail, and then I send out Stunfisk. My reasoning here is pretty simple. If they're leading Talonflame and they have a Malamar as a safe switch, I think it's a safe play to assume that their final Pokemon is going to be very strong into Stunfisk. So I'm kind of just going to throw away the Stunfisk here. Even if my opponent is able to make a play for switch advantage, I think that's just very fine. Because I don't need switch against Talonflame, my entire team beats it. They're able to fire off charge attack after charge attack, but this is the non-Shadow Malamar. They just can't do enough damage. They pivot back into Talonflame, and I get to answer with the Gyarados. Gyarados gonna overfarm to the max, CMP tying them here with the Aqua Tail. Shadow Aqua Tail is gonna land, picking up the 1-hit KO, and it's Toxapex in the back, so I was completely mistaken. I was expecting it was gonna be a Gastrodon, but no, it's a Toxapex. That's a Pokemon I haven't seen in quite some time. But Toxapex, it's not gonna like what comes next. We send in Licky Licky. Licky Licky is just too bulky, and my opponent will resign the match. Shadow Gyarados into a non-Shadow Feraligatr in the next match. Even Hydro Cannon will do quite a lot of damage. In comes Shadow Drapion, and unfortunately here when the Drapion got brought in, the visuals were a little inconsistent, so I wasn't quite sure where they were at in terms of their counts. So I will put up the shield and look to try and farm down. They do bait with the Aqua Tail. I try for the farm. I can't get it. And in the moment, I panicked. I didn't know if they had the crunch or not, and it turns out they did not. So the visuals caused me to doubt my counts there and end up shielding a move that could have only been an Aqua Tail. But even down 2 shields, we should be okay once the final Pokemon is revealed as Charge-a-Bug. So not the best played beginning of the match, but we're able to send in Licky Licky. My opponent brings back out the Feraligatr, and that means Charge-a-Bug is going to get absolutely destroyed by Stunfisk. Since I got a shield with the Body Slam bait, I'm just going for broke. I'm full send of the Earthquake. Earthquake into Feraligatr does get shielded, and just like that, I was down 2 shields, and I'm right back in it. I am now at a 0-0 shield endgame, which is exactly what I need. In comes Gyarados. I was watching for a catch, so I didn't end up throwing any energy. Hydro Cannon will not knock me out, but it will get me low. In comes the Charge-a-Bug, and I get to send out Stunfisk. And Stunfisk, unfortunately for this poor Charge-a-Bug, there's just not really anything they can do. They can go X-Scissor after X-Scissor, but I triple resist the Volt Switches. Good luck ever trying to Volt Switch down a Stunfisk. It's just simply not going to happen. I have a ton of energy loaded on the Gyarados as well, and that energy is going to be deadly into that Feraligatr later on. These Mud Bombs really do not do a lot, but their X-Scissors don't do much either. So the goal is just to try and get them into a range where I can potentially knock them out with the Gyarados. So I will fire off Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb is going to be getting them deep into the red HP. I switch in the Gyarados, anticipating the switch into Feraligatr, and I get to take the knockout with Crunch. Crunch lands, Feraligatr, gets KO'd after one more Dragon Breath. We Dragon Breath down Charge-a-Bug. And even with a really awkward beginning to the match, we still get the win. Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Annihilate. My opponent safe switches into Furret. They do not fear Wigglytuff, and honestly, I kind of respect that. Wigglytuff's definitely on my list of Pokemon I would like to see nerfed the most. That Fairy normal typing is just really constricting to a lot of team building. Furret is going to fire off Swift at the Licky Licky, and I'm pretty happy just to try and absorb damage on the Licky Licky and hopefully get it as low as possible, so that way the Annihilate's not going to get a lot of farm. So I overfarm to the max, look to take the knockout with Body Slam, and I'll make an Earthquake into their Annihilate. Opponent's going to be waiting down the timer here. Back in comes the Annihilate. I am able to just get enough energy for the Earthquake. Earthquake is going to be shielded up. They pivot into Stunfisk, and I respond with my own. Switch timers are slightly desynced here by a second or two, but I should still be in a pretty good spot. I'm up a shield, which is exactly where I want to be, and I know that I have energy stored on the Gyarados. That energy is going to be pretty helpful. I don't have a lot of energy, but they don't have a lot of energy on the Annihilate. I did end up firing off an Aqua Tail and overfarming slightly before doing so. So in an endgame, I should be in a pretty okay spot, especially because my Stunfisk, as it turns out, wins Charge Attack priority over my opponents. This is really helpful because this allows me to get some pretty precise overfarms. So Mud Bomb is going to be shielded up. I'm just going to look to overfarm to the max here and CMP tie them once again. So now they have to decide, where does the final Protect Shield go? They let it go. They're leaving it all up to Annihilate. They're hoping that Annihilate will be able to boost up and just counter down the Gyarados. Gyarados is a flying type. I know it's a very glassy flying type, but they're just never going to get that farm down. Shadow Gyarados is just simply too good. Gyarados gets the Aqua Tail. We make it to another Aqua Tail as well, and that's going to be all she wrote for Annihilate. Annihilate taken down by the Aqua Tail, and Shadow Gyarados just keeps on winning. Hopping into the final match, picking up a pretty scary lead, Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Dusknoir. My opponent ends up safe switching into Blastoise, and this is a Pokemon that I haven't seen in a while, but I really miss Blastoise, so I'm pretty happy to see it here. Blastoise, these rollouts are adding up quite a bit. It's highly likely that I do end up getting baited here, but I have to respect the Skull Bash. They do go Hydro Cannon, I throw 2, and get a catch and sneak onto Licky Licky. This should hopefully allow me to KO in 3 rollouts, meaning they're not going to get their next Hydro Cannon, so I go for the farm down, but Blastoise 1 HP remaining. They barely hang on, and they make the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will take the knockout. There's the Bastiodon, and I have Earthquake. Bastiodon should be pretty comfortably tanking anything Licky Licky throws, except for Earthquake. We get the Earthquake, devastating damage onto the Bastiodon. I make the last second Body Slam, and now I get to send in Stunfisk. Opponent sends back in the Dusknoir. Dusknoir, this is a matchup where it actually struggles quite a bit, because Dusknoir really relies on just kind of brute force farming things down with Astonish, but Stunfisk is just so bulky. Stunfisk is able to absorb these Astonishes very comfortably. Mud Bomb is going to be shielded. My opponent cannot afford to shield here, because if they do, then they're just getting KO'd by a crunch. So they end up no shielding. In comes Gyarados. There's the combo as I fire off Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail into the Dusknoir is going to be shielded. There's the switch out. In comes Bastiodon. Bastiodon's getting knocked out by a Shadow Gyarados. D-Gen getting KO'd by one of the coolest Pokemon in the meta, Shadow Gyarados. Dusknoir will get the farm down. In comes Stunfisk. Stunfisk gets the Mud Bomb before they get the double up, and we're walking away victorious. Mud Bomb KOs Shadow Dusknoir, and that is a good game. I really feel that overall I have soured quite a bit on this current Open Great League meta. I think that there's a lot of like toxic fast food pressure mons that are just simply too strong right now, and that ends up being quite problematic. But I did really enjoy this team. This team I felt like was kind of able to cut through some of that fast food pressure nonsense, with Gyarados doing a really good job at shutting down some of the common fast food pressure mons like Annihilate and the Mud Slappers and Talonflame. And the things that Gyarados can't really beat, which is the Wigglytuff and the Bastiodon, then you end up having Licky and Stunfisk in the back that can both do pretty well there. Now, unfortunately, it looks like I did end up editing out some of the footage of Licky EQing Bastiodon. I think there was only one in there, and I ended up EQing like 3 or 4. But I wanted to try and include more like unique battles against different teams, rather than just showcasing the same like Gourgeist plus something plus Bastiodon, where I safe switch Licky and then Bastiodon gets Earthquaked a bunch of times. So I wanted to try and showcase a bit more variety across what I saw. I did end up beating some teams that I feel like this team had kind of no business beating, but Shadow Gyarados energy is just absolutely crazy. It's definitely, in my eyes, a pretty high skill Pokemon. Like, it's a very frail Pokemon, and knowing how much to overfarm can be really, really beneficial, because there's going to be a lot of situations where Gyarados will go as far as your energy management will take you. So this team, I mean, it's incredibly strong. The results speak for themselves. I believe it was 28-20 up to 30-30 in 4 sets, 18-2, so a 90% win rate across those 4 sets. And yeah, the team was just a blast. That's the other thing, is not only was it strong, but sometimes teams can be a little strong but kind of boring. This is a strong and fun team. Shadow Gyarados was just absolutely shredding opponents. And overall, it was a really good day of battles. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do support the channel by leaving a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys, also very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.